what they did is they created a framework, and now they're trying to fill in the framework by putting maximum upper limits on these vitamin mineral guidelines. They haven't finished doing that, but the chairman, the guy I pointed out to you in the crowd there, he's also the head of the German Risk Assessment Institute that hopes to implement, discover, and then implement and insert into the guidelines these maximum upper limits. Because see, they think vitamins and minerals are dangerous for you, or at least that's what they're saying. But the real reason is they want to eliminate the competition for all the drugs that they can sell. Because if you get well by taking one cheap, inexpensive capsule of 50,000 units of vitamin D, you don't need their drugs that cost hundreds of euros to maybe get better and take days or weeks to get better. Or you don't need the injections with the mercury adjuvants in them. So, you know, this is incredible competition that they can suppress. So they have come out with what they consider to be the safe upper limits for vitamin. I won't go through them all, but just to give you a representative example, they think niacin is so dangerous for you. It's routinely, by the way, sold in health food shops in the US at 500 milligrams a capsule, which is nothing. I know people who take 8 of those a day. But they want to put a cap of 17 milligrams per capsule on that. That's what they would like to do. And that's what we're fighting at the Codex level and at these meetings. 17 milligrams, they think that's the safe upper limit. And on vitamin D, keeping in mind the amount that I took safely, and then what other people take. I mean, you stand in the sun in the summertime, maybe not in Ireland, but in southern France or something in the summertime, and you can create in your body in a couple of hours 10,000 units of vitamin D. Now, it seems to, according to the people who know, it seems to then hover at about that. It's hard to get more than that because then the sun starts destroying the manufactured vitamin D, but you do get 10,000 units. Now, these morons at the German Risk Institute, they want to put a cap of 5 micrograms of vitamin D on any capsule. Now, 5 micrograms, if you do the math, it comes out to about 200 international units. So 200 international units. They want to make sure that you cannot get well by taking vitamin D. And most people in Northern Europe and Northern America, especially in the fall, the winter, and the spring, need to take supplemental vitamin D because you don't get it in your diet typically. Even if you eat a lot of deep sea fish, it's tough to get adequate levels of vitamin D. Just think about how you get the flu. You know, when does flu season occur? It really doesn't occur in the summer. Typically it occurs January, February. That's because most people have built up a reserve of vitamin D in their livers during the summertime, and then here rolls along September, it gets a little lower, October even lower, November lower still, December very low. By January you're out. And vitamin D is what hypes up your immune system to resist viruses. So then you're prime target, ground zero for a viral attack. And that's why the flu season tends to strike then. So it's especially important for you to get vitamin D supplementation. And another thing is not at the levels that they're telling you. They're telling you that you, at least they were, telling you that you only needed 400 units a day. But about 6 years ago, they discovered they were off by a factor of 10. You really need about 4,000 a day. I myself take about 5,000 a day to keep from getting sick. Now, here we also have other issues that are going on, which are like GM food labeling. That's a huge battle. And various countries, I mentioned the 27 committees, the Codex committees, and various countries sponsor the committee. For example, the German government sponsors the CCNFSBU committee that deals with vitamin and mineral supplements. And so those meetings are typically held in Germany once a year. The GM food labeling issue, it falls within the Codex Committee on Food Labeling that's sponsored by Canada, and those meetings are held in Canada each and every year. The Aspartame and Aluminum Food Additives Committee, which actually called the Codex Committee on Food Additives, is sponsored by, or hosted by, China, and so it's held usually in Beijing. And then there's the Codex Committee on Contaminants in Foods, and that's usually in Holland. Next year it'll be in Turkey. And in this particular instance, we're attracted to the melamine issue, which, as you may recall, that was the contaminant some Chinese were adding it into pet foods because it can fool the testing for the protein content of any food product. And it's a cheap replacement. Instead of having to spend money on protein, actual real protein, you put melamine in, and it tests the same as if it's protein, but it just happens to have the bad side effect of killing cats and dogs and humans. So, that sort of puts some people off. And so, believe it or not, this Codex committee that I went to, I was shocked to discover that they were discussing having permissible, acceptable limits of melamine in foods, which is ridiculous because a lot of these things are cumulative. Look at aluminum. They want to make it okay to have aluminum food additives, or aluminium, as you would say here, and melamine. And those are things that we absolutely oppose. These are man-made products that are highly dangerous. So Codex puts out a number of publications. This is just a little sampling here. And one of the publications that they put out is their Codex Strategic Plan. Now, the Codex Strategic Plan, a lot of people tell you, well, these rules are just meant to apply internationally, not domestically. That's the big argument in the US as to why we should support it, because in the US we have a law called the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act that protects our freedoms. There are several countries, really just a handful of countries, that are quite open and liberal with the sale of vitamin and mineral supplements in the world. You can name them on one hand and maybe have fingers left over, maybe not, but that would be the United States at the top of the list. Secondarily would be South Africa, and tertiarily would be Canada, Ireland, the UK, Holland, and Sweden. But unfortunately, the latter ones all fall within the European Union, and with European Union Food Supplements Directive coming into full effect by the end of this year, you can kiss a lot of your freedoms and your access to supplements goodbye. Well, in the Codex Strategic Plan, and again, this is, except for those of you who are eagle-eyed, this is kind of hard to read, but this makes it clear that and here's the book itself that's showing on the screen, that it's meant to apply domestically, because they state in their strategic vision statement there, just to read one sentence, to this end, the Commission will develop internationally agreed standards and related texts for use in domestic regulation and international trade in food. And it goes on to claim that they'll be based on scientific principles. So, for those who argue that Codex will not usurp domestic legislation, they're really off track. And there's another instance where they refer to domestic implementation of Codex guidelines, which, by the way, is supported by all the treaties that Ireland, for instance, the United States, the European community in general has signed on all these issues. So you have the European Union FSA that issues regulations that are binding on all of the EU member states, and this includes the Food Supplements Directive that I was just referring to. And it started taking effect July 31, 2005. Well, it goes into effect by the end of the year, and it mirrors these vitamin food supplement guidelines are being put into effect at the Codex level, at the international level. Again, suppressing, for the most part, natural remedies. Now, look at the United States, just briefly. You have domestic legislation, both good and bad. They keep trying to take it away, and for those of you, I'll apologize to those of you who are Obama fans, but Democrats and the Obamaites are very anti-supplement, very anti-natural remedies. They've never been our friends in that respect. You might think they should be. They have that kind of live and let live and attitude, or supposedly, but they really don't. They work very hard to suppress all of this. And in fact, Obama was the major recipient of pharmaceutical industry drug money during the last campaign. That's not to say I was a fan of his opponent, because I was not at all. There just wasn't a choice. I mean, if you choose between puppet A or puppet B, what choice do you have? You don't have a choice. And that's the way they've been running the United States for decades. For election after election cycle, is you get a choice of puppet A or puppet B. Heads you win, tails you lose kind of scenario. But in this case, we have the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act, and that took away all the arbitrary powers, or virtually all the arbitrary powers of the FDA. Now, they just passed in the House of Representatives this so-called Food Safety Act of 2009, and they keep chipping away at